Journal Night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. Here this evening with Dave and very shortly soon to be Dino as well. And tonight we're going to be talking about the squad with our end of season review. And I think there's Dino joining us right there, perfect on time. And we're going to be talking about the squad and do a bit of an end of season review. I've been round the guys at the Journal and we've reviewed the team. The players and made some decisions on whether we want these guys to stay or leave in the upcoming for the upcoming season. Apologies for a late start. So we're just a little bit behind, but we're getting going now. Thank you to everyone who's in the comments and waiting. See a lot of familiar faces there. Good evening, Gordon, KW as well, Mark Doe, William, Aldo. Good evening to you all and everyone else who is sitting and watching. Do get your comments in as we go through on any of the players that we discuss. And we shall, as I say, run the rule over the team as it is now, which may not work out well for many of them. I'll just quickly start off going around the guys. Evening, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. Keen to get into it now that Dino's here because I know he shares my view on a certain striker that I'm sure we'll get to, but looking forward to it, mate.
Good stuff. And yourself, Dino, how are you getting on?
I'm good, thanks, mate. I was just, bit of a luxury there lying on my bed thinking I've got 25 minutes to the pod starts, thinking for first time in a while that I've been early and, however, all good. I'm glad I'm here, mate.
Excellent. Glad to have both of you for this evening's chat. So the guys last night sort of ran rule over kind of the main candidates they feel to be Deadwood and how sort of the transfer strategy for them. We'll be touching on some of those points as well, but also just as importantly, players that we want to still stay at the club. And as I say, kind of giving them a Rangers Journal official rating for the season. So we've got plenty to do. So we'll kick off very quickly just with a bit of a context for the season in terms of how we're reviewing these players. A lot of them are obviously being reviewed not just on their individual performances, but within the context of how the team has performed season 24-25. So you can see obviously finishing second there, 75 points to Celtic's 92. So a gap there to be overcome. Along the top, we spent a significant amount of time in the first half of the season in third place before sort of retaking our what sadly is our usual position at the moment in second. Largely due to Aberdeen's excellent form at the beginning and our sort of starting start. Got a cup finishes, again, very disappointing in the Scottish Cup. League Cup, we did get to the final, and we were unfortunate on that one. That went down to penalties, which obviously can kind of go either way. And then we've got the one thing that I think we can sort of be happy with, which is our Europa League campaign, getting to the quarterfinals, deep into that tournament. And although we could have played better over the two legs that we exited in, as I say, I think on the whole, everyone's reasonably happy with that. I've popped our top scorers, our top assisters up for a little bit of context there as well. I think there is some interest to be taken from that in terms of particularly players that appear in both columns that are contributing on both sides of the coin. So not only scoring goals, but creating goals as well. So you've got players like Dessers, Cherney, Tavernier that do appear on both ends. The main thing I think that can be taken from that, however, is you've got kind of the top two, top three who have numbers that I think are good, acceptable, or what we would want to see. Goals and assists, sort of 10 plus. Particularly our goals, the top three are very good. But below that, the numbers drop off quite quickly, and that's where we need to see further improvements from your players like your Diamandes, Hadjis, JFD, Barama, your midfielders, and sort of more attacking defenders that we would want to see a little bit higher on. So that's just a little bit of, as I say, quick context for what we're going into. So we'll kick off straight away with our goalkeepers. I'll come to you first of all, Dave. Obviously, we've got two keepers that have played predominantly in the season. I should say that players that have been given ratings by us must have played at least or over 5 matches. I've not included anyone that's played less than 5 matches, as they've not really had an opportunity to have much of an impact. So there are some players that may have appeared but won't be in this. We all know, Dave, Butland started the season off reasonably fine, having had a very good first season, but then went off a cliff. We've had Kelly, who's then come in and been reasonably good for that sort of latter third of the season. Neither have really gotten superb scores. Kelly, I think, is done not too bad, but there's very high percentages there in terms of what the journal crew want in terms of coming and going. People seem pretty happy with Kelly, but the consensus seems to be to sell Butland. You in agreement with that, or did you have any different thoughts there?
Yeah, no. So to be fair, Doug, that's exactly how I voted, mate. I think the difference. I wouldn't say Kelly's like massively better than, but Kelly is what he is. He's a Scottish backup keeper. So for me, that's a bit of a no-brainer to keep around. Fills your quota, and he hasn't done terribly when he's called. That is exactly the problem, right? What you've just flashed up from KW there. Butland's on hefty money, and we should be expecting a lot from him. And I think, especially the way the game is now with the modern game, you're expected to do a lot more on the ball as a keeper. Your distribution needs to be on point so that you can almost build attacks from the back. And I'm not going to get into it. I think we all know that Butland doesn't have that as a strength in his locker. He's an excellent He's an excellent shot stopper when he's on form, but he seemed to suffer from a lack of confidence for a large part of last season. So for me, between the wages and the kind of diminishing form and the fact that he's never been great at what we're going to need from our number one next year, especially if it is Ancelotti that comes in, for me, it's a hard sell.
So, and if I come to you then, Dino, obviously the sort of poor form that Butland's shown has in part been due to errors. He's made a few clangers this season that have just been simply him, fumbling balls. However, some of the goals that we've lost, I think, are a combination of the defence being very poor as well. It's not entirely Butland that's at fault for some of the things that have happened. Do you think there's any way a new manager comes in and manages to get his confidence up again and we can see the Butland we had in season 1? Or do you just think, no, it does just need to be a cut and dry sale? We've talked about the wages there. That might not be a stumbling block for, say, a Premiership team who'll take him as a backup and he maybe goes back to doing what he was before. What's your thoughts on that? And then in terms of Kelly, I've seen some people in the comments suggesting we need 2 new goalkeepers. Would you be happy going into next season with a new first choice and Kelly still as backup, or do you think we need to improve in both?
In terms of Butland, in my opinion, it was probably good for 2/3 / 3/4 of last season. It was right up until he was getting touted to be in the England squad. I even did an interview with Andy Firth on it, and it was just, people were going on about to say, Butland, £15 million bracket, if a bid comes in, that's the type of money we should be looking at. Things like that, So he was really, really good, and then it's just, in my opinion, it's just been crap ever since. So I really want him to go. But I think the problem lies perhaps with if he's wanting first team football. Is he going to be able to get the wages at a club down south and he's going to be number 1? I don't know, because we obviously don't know how much exactly he's on, but I think I've seen people suggest 35 to 40 grand, perhaps closer to the latter. So I think we've got to look at it from a point of view, is he going to, first of all, want to go? And second, is he going to be able to go and be at a team that's going to be giving him first team football? I don't think he'd be happy going and sitting on the bench. That's just my own opinion. Could be wrong. He might be happy thinking, well, I can go in there and 50 grand and me third choice at some England club to fill a European quota. Who knows? But I just think he would want to go and play. In terms of Kelly, he's no brainer keeping him as second choice. He's came in and he's been solid in my opinion. Good solid Scottish league goalkeeper. Going and invest in somebody that's maybe going to be our number one for a period of time. That's what I want, and I think that's what a lot of people do want. I don't see the need for getting rid of Kelly, and also we've got a lot of good young goalkeepers who can be third choice, and if the opportunity arises for them, it'd be good to get the minutes given that there's no sort of B team anymore. So if there was a younger keeper that gets a chance to, 5 games or something next season, I think that's a really good move by the club. I don't see the point in bringing in another goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people in the comments are agreeing. Butland's time is up. I do think we can find a place for him. If he wants first team football, he's probably more likely to land in the Championship. But then, as I say, it depends on what some of the big teams are doing. I think Carson's leaving Man City, so maybe Butland fancies going, sitting there doing nothing and getting a couple of Champions League medals over the next 10 years, like Carson has. But yeah, we'll just need to see on that one. But yeah, I think that those ones are pretty clear cut. As we move on to the line ahead of him, we're moving into our centre backs. So just to give everyone a quick pre-say over what the information is in front of you. Hopefully it's self-explanatory, but you've also got some of the player details up top. The A for appearances. The P stands for played from the start, because there wasn't an S icon that I could find for starter. So you've got appearances and how many starts they made, and their minutes. So you can kind of equate as to whether you can kind of see, obviously, if you look at Sutter there, 40 appearances, 3,000 odd minutes. If you see much smaller numbers with similarly high figures, you can tell a player's made a lot of small appearances there. We've got a couple of key stats, depending on what the position is. A little bit of a pre-say. And then your big number along the bottom is the official Rangers Journal rating for that player for this season. So 15 of the Journal team completed a survey on all the players to get sort of a final score for a rating for them. And then at the bottom, again, the same 15 people all said whether they would like to keep or get rid of the player. So we've got the percentage of the Journal team who said that there. So just a quick pre-say of the info. One other thing, you can see there Balogun, his background is red. If the player's background is red, that indicates he's already left. So we probably don't really need to touch on him so much. Dave, I'll just open it straight up to you. Out of the 4 that are still here, is there anyone you'd particularly like to comment on in terms of their end of season review from yourself?
Yeah, I think just on Balogun, I think it was absolutely right that he went. Injuries have caught up, unfortunately, even more so this season. But he did perform well when he was available. He goes with thanks, which I think when we get to some of the later ones, perhaps won't be as much the case. Looking at who's staying, I'm going to take Robin Proper. I'm not convinced he's a bad defender. He's just utterly unsuited to Scottish football. And he actually did an interview on it where he talked about it. The way the balls come in to the defenders, and obviously in Scotland, a lot of them are coming in, quite high, and it's a physical aerial battle. Whereas what he was used to was a bit more technical, kind of ball on the floor, ground duels side of it. So he even identified the struggles himself. In that interview, his aim was that by the end of the season, he would be first choice. He'd be a starter. I think he's failed in that completely. He has had some good appearances, and it's not a surprise to me that most of those come in Europe. It's very Ben Davies-like. He's a certain kind of defender, and a certain kind of football suits him. And unfortunately, in domestic football. So for me, the rest of the guys obviously agree as well at 100%, but yeah, he definitely needs to go. Decent enough, just wrong club for him.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you're spot on. Proper and Davies both are good defenders and are good players. I mean, Davies has gone obviously to Birmingham this season and performed really well. Birmingham are apparently keen to keep him. So he surely is a good player, but yeah, neither seem to be able to take to the Scottish game that well. If I could pick up Enciala with yourself, Enciala obviously came in sort of an exciting prospect from AC Milan. He had a lot of really good players who were singing his praises. We didn't see him for a long time. And then, as we tend to do, we got a bunch of injuries and so threw in the young man when we had no other option to. But much to our surprise, he played pretty well for the whole. He obviously had that one game where he was taken off early. Not entirely his fault, I don't think. But he's come back and played some more games since. And I think the majority of people are quite keen to see him push to try and start next season. We've obviously got 93% of the crew have said to keep him this year. What's your kind of thoughts on what you've seen of him, and is he one you'd like to see getting more starts in the coming season?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like him to, double his starts next season at least. 20 to 25, I think, should be the target for getting him starting in the first team, and also with rotation and coming on in games and stuff. So definitely, he's a player that I think we should be looking to improve as much as we can to, sell on in, 18 months, 2 years time. That's the kind of thing I want to for him to be doing and challenging the person that's going to be the starter next season. Really, really good player, I think. Quite an intelligent defender. Looks strong and robust as well. Physically able to, handle himself in our league. So, which is quite good, because coming from the Serie A it's a complete and utter night and day difference to the FPL, especially for a young player. We've seen a lot of young Scottish players go over to Italy and tear it up, but you seldom see young Italian players or coming to Scotland and succeeding. So obviously it's quite rare, but I do think that he's definitely one to hold on to and improve as much as we can.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think it would be good to see him more next season. On the other side of that scale, we've also got the youngster there, King. King's obviously been around here for a while at the club. He came in a few seasons back during our Champions League run. Similar circumstances, injuries forced our hand to eventually play him. I, for one, have always maintained, despite how rough those games were, that I thought he did really well under the circumstances. Since then, though, he's kind of barely had a look in, and we've got 100% sale there for him now. Unlike the 100% sale for Proper, which I think is based on, we're not a fan of this player. We just want rid of him because he's not any good. I think the 100% sale for King more comes from the space of, this is a young one of our own kind of lad that we want to see do well, and we just don't think that that's going to be with us. Partly maybe due to ability, but also partly just because he's not getting a look in, and therefore it's best for him to go and get some first team football. He's been on loan second half of the season. He's done reasonably well. Would you share my thoughts on that, Dave? That I want him to go because I want to see him go off and do well for himself, and he's going to need to leave Rangers to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both, Doug. Absolutely, don't wish the guy any harm. Want him to do well, but equally, I think he did okay in those Champions League games, but there was nothing that kind of stood out and said that's a Rangers quality player. And to be fair, I've not seen anything since. I mean, let's face it, we've hardly seen him. And I think that sums it up nicely. I just don't think he's quite at the level to play for us. Maybe a lower half Premier or top half championship team in Scotland, aye. But I don't think he's quite got the ability to be a mainstay in the Rangers team. And then, you know, you ask yourself, do you keep him around just to fill a quota? Is that really fair on him? Or, as you said, you just let him go out, get the game time, and basically do his career as well as he can with his ability. And that, for me, I think is the right option for him and for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so moving on, I'll bring you in, Dino, for our fullbacks section here. I'll let Dave pick a player in the previous slide, so you're up for this one. Pick any name you like. Who would you like to touch on in this one? You're on mute there, I think.
Yep. Yellow card. Jeffy.
Thoughts on Jeffy?
Get rid. Simple as that. I'm sorry, but I appreciate different cultures and different blah 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 blah, but getting ripped by part-timer Queen's Park just breeds not capable to me. Basics of defending, like, that you get taught when you're a boy. Do you know, I appreciate he's a 21-year-old, but he just falls asleep far too often at that back post. That just is just not good enough at this level. And also, to caveat that, I don't actually think his numbers are that good going forward as well. I do as well. What bugs me is that he's turned up in the dead rubbers. Like, you know, so he never turned up when it mattered. It's so for me, he's got to go. Cut losses and make some money on him. I'd imagine you'd be like at least double what we got for him, but I could be wrong. But I get rid.
Okay, and Dave, come yourself on Jeffy. He does split opinion. We've got 53% want to keep him, so it was only just on that margin. A lot of people agreeing with Dino there. 5.1, so he's got an average score as well. A lot of the comments are agreeing with the fact that he can't defend. He has struggles on that back post. We saw that in, for example, the game against Man United, where he totally lost his man at the end. And going forward, while I think he does have a lot of good properties, his pace in particular, he's the one player in our team that has really good burst of pace and can progress the ball forward. What I saw in the early season was he would get to the byline a lot and cut balls back and create chances that way. But I don't think we really saw a lot of that as the season went on. It got more and more to being types of crosses and things like that, which is why I think his goals and assist numbers aren't where they maybe could have been. Where do you fall on this side? Do you think, we give him another season? As Dino said, he is still a young player. Do we give him another season to develop, or are you on the get rid train as well?
Yeah, I'm with Dino. I'd get rid. I think defensively, you mentioned the Man U games. There's been a couple of others as well, which are almost carbon copies of that, where he's just completely been ghosted by the guy he's supposed to mark. Delivery into the box, it's not great. It's not great, and that's borne out by the numbers there on your slide. 1 goal, 4 assists. Not expecting him to be, in the 20s or anything, but he should certainly be higher than that in a ball dominant team like the Rangers are for most of the season. I think the one thing that he does really excel in is running with the ball. He's really good at making up quite a lot of ground, and I would guess that is probably a lot of what's attracting some of these kind of interested parties, like they were talking about Chelsea in the winter break. Now, he's a bit like Tav in this sense. Even when he looks absolutely minging to the eye, he still seems to tick all the boxes so that when, your sofa scores or the Rangers Journal in this case trot out a score, he actually does quite well in it. But if you've just sat and watched the performance, you're like, how on earth are you scoring him like that? And I think Jeffrey's very similar to that. I think, you know, a lot of teams use data analytics for their scouting these days, and he probably ticks a lot of boxes there. And the hope would be that some of these worst characteristics could maybe be trained out of him, developed out of him. So really, for me, you want to sell him as soon as possible before he has another season and it does turn out like this one. And then these teams are like, maybe not. So for me, I think the time's right. I think you should easily get more than $1 million for him based on what he's done, but you're not going to be getting kind of 10 million either. So I would sell him while we still can, to be blunt.
Good luck. So two sells there for Jeffy. For my point of view, I would keep Jeffy for the main purpose that, and I'm going to assume that you two fall in this bracket as well. 93% have said that we want to sell Yilmaz. Before I start, were either of you two one of the? I think that would be one person out of the 15 that wanted to keep him. No,
God no. I actually quite like Yilmaz as a player.
Yeah, no, I do as well. I actually think he's better than Jeffy in a lot of ways, but he's not fit enough.
Exactly.
He's one of those players that just has never been fit enough, and so I think we need to sell Yilmaz. I think we can. There's still enough interest in him, particularly maybe from his home country, that we can maybe recoup. We'll not get what we paid for, but we'll get a little bit back for him, I think. And because we're going to sell him, or in my opinion, we have to sell him. And I think we're all agreed on that. That's why I would keep Yefte, because I think he's good enough that we can potentially improve him, and then we can bring in someone to challenge him. I would want to be bringing in a player that is a potential first team left back, and then leave that challenge up. So you're saying to Yefte, right, it's your shirt to lose, because he's obviously got it right now. But you're bringing in, for example, we've been linked, or people have talked about players like Penrice from Hearts. He could come in and be a starting left back. So you bring in someone like that, and then you challenge Jeffy to improve, and then I think you hopefully see that improvement in him. So for me, I think on the practical level, I would be keeping him, if nothing else. But I'll not be terribly upset if he was to be sold, because of the kind of reasons we've brought up there. The other big, I think, one who follows kind of similar to Yilmaz, I think, in this should we sell or should we keep, as fan favourite Sterling. Got him there. Again, he's got a pretty low rating. But again, I think that low rating is not necessarily down to his performances, but more down to his unavailability. Sterling obviously plays well. He plays well wherever he plays, which is all over the pitch. But there is a question there, I think, as to, he's in his mid-20s now. He should be approaching his peak, but he's still not nailed down a first-team place due to those injuries. 60% do still want to keep him. So it's just on the right side of that vote. But if I come to you first this time, Dino, where did you sit? Where do you sit on the Sterling point? Would you keep him, or were you one of the ones that said he should go?
No, I remember I'd never actually voted. Remember I said it to you other in the messages.
You didn't have to admit to that. You could have just said, I vote.
No, I'm too honest. I'm too honest. But
what would you vote? What would you vote?
Get rid of Sterling when he's fit. Brilliant player. Really the type of physical person that I think of and have been starved of for a period of time. He just epitomises, I think, everything that we lack in our squad in terms of physicality and pace and motivation, drive, grit, you name it, he's got it. He's got that bite about him, but it's like Yilmaz made of polystyrene. And unfortunately, we cannot continue to have these passengers in our squad. We need to be setting our sights bigger than that, because we are bigger than that. We're Rangers. We can't be set. We can't have settling for that. It's just not on. I would have loved him to have been fit and the starting right back, but just no. Unfortunately, he just isn't able to handle the robustness of our league, unfortunately. Holds a bit of value because of being obviously English, trained, club trained and homegrown and whatnot for European quotas. I'm not saying he's good enough to play for a team in the Champions League, but I would, perhaps be a team in the Conference League. I don't know, but he does have the ability to play at a very good level, which we've all seen him do. So if we're able to get him shifted in January, because I believe his Achilles injury is quite a long one and he will be out for a considerable amount of time. If he's still not fit enough for then, I'll be looking to shift him on a year from now.
Okay, so that leaves us, Dave. Obviously, we've got Kazan Virgil has already left, so we'll not spend much time on him. But it leaves us with the big question. It's been the big question for at least 2 or 3 years now, which is Captain James Tavernier. I'm deliberately avoiding Dino for this one. I'm only kidding. I will come to you eventually. Tav, again, he's had a slightly divisive season. He started off poorly. He picked up, had a good period in the centre, then did make a couple of high-profile mistakes towards the end as well. He does have mistakes in him, lacks of concentration. We saw that, and he admitted as such in the game against Athletic Club, where he was too busy trying to sort out other things and neglected to keep an eye on the player that he was marking. So we know that part about him. We know he's not the marauding player that he once was. He doesn't get quite up and down as he used to. But on the other side, we saw another side to him as a sort of a right-sided centre-back, as another option for him to potentially play, which could give him more options moving forward if we do bring in new players for the right side. And he does, again, end the season as one of our top 5 goal scorers and as our number 1 for assists, 13 assists. It's a really good number. 5 goals, which is much lower for him. That is partly down to the fact we just got given no penalties this season. Obviously, penalties do usually factor into his goal numbers. In terms of his on-field, in-play goals, he got 9 in-play goals last season, 5 this season, so a bit of a drop there. Where do you sit? We've got 53% of the team said keep, so again, it's kind of down the middle. You got 6.1, so just above average in terms of play. He's obviously just got 1 more year left. I think that we could kind of fill the Balogun position where, I think we need to be bringing in right backs. I was really keen on Casa. I thought he could have been a really good option. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I do think we need to bring in fresh players to challenge. But for a player that's again played 40, I think it's 48 matches he started, appeared in 53. That's pretty much 10 years in a row that he's been playing at those numbers of games. So he's always available, which is perfect for a backup player because he can come in and he'll be fit. You'll know he'll be able to put in a reasonable performance majority of the time. But there are those that think from the rebrand, new era, freshness kind of angle that you need to get rid of him regardless and appoint someone new from a leadership point of view. So there's loads to consider in the Tavernier equation. How do you untangle all that, Dave?
Right. So I'm going to start with the fact that 5 goals and one of our top goal scorers is absolutely pathetic. I know you mentioned it before, but I just think we need to acknowledge that it just simply isn't good enough. Where do I fall on Tav? I'm firmly in the 53%, I'm afraid to say, Doug. I do think he needs to go. So there is the general kind of morale around the place, new era, new start, get out with the old, in with the new. But I think there's some other reasons beyond that. So a lot of his game was based on his athleticism, his ability to get up and down the pitch. As you've highlighted, that is on the wane. He is kind of getting older. And I'm not saying he's totally dried up yet, but he's certainly heading that way. And he's at a stage in his career now where that will just become more and more pronounced. Now, he put in a couple of decent performances at centre-back. I think he had a couple of issues as well, though. And I think for me, the biggest thing here is we shouldn't be trying to find a place for this guy. He's not a centre back, right? He's not. He did okay a couple of times, but he just isn't a centre back. So, if we're trying to slot him in for the sake of finding a place for him, what does that say about the direction we're going as a team? Nothing good. So for me, I thank him for everything he's done, and I think sometimes he is blamed where it's not necessarily his fault, but ultimately now feels like the right time to shift him on for me.
And do you know about yourself? Where tell the people, for those who may not know, where you're sitting on the Tav debate.
Yeah, Tav needs to go. Just for all the reasons that Dave alluded to. Don't think there's much else really that needs added to that. But the one thing that bugs me about him is the slow and the, I want us to be playing fast football, and I don't think he's got the capabilities at this stage in his career to be able to play fast football. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to start doing to win against the jobbers, so to speak. We're just going to have that in our setup. But like Dave said, it's a whole new era. You've got reading a lot of things about Davide and things like that. Just kind of get the impression he's just going to want to come in and put his own stance on, his own take on everything, and be that, basically build from the foundations, upset the foundations himself, so to speak. So yeah, aye, as Dave said there, thank him for the 10 seasons that he's had with us, but time to move on, to get younger and hungrier and fresher blood in.
Does it make any difference to you guys if he, obviously, so we're talking about, I think we're all agreed, we want young, hungry, fresh players coming in. We've failed, one of the reasons he's still there is we've failed to bring in someone who has adequately challenged him. And I thought we were starting to see that this year, as I say, with Castrovillo. He looked really promising until his injury. Does it make a difference if he was, say, the new manager comes in and said to Tav, look, I'm going to change the captaincy because I want to refresh things, but I want to keep you as a backup player? Does that, do you see any value in that, or do you think it needs to be a complete, as I say, break? I'll start with you, Dave.
So for me, it needs to be a complete break, mate.
Myself, there's not very many players that, that are captains, get stripped of the captaincy and are still able to perform. He's been the captain for 7 years. That's quite a long time. Been at the club, obviously, 10 years come the summer. I just think that, mentally, that quite a lot to take that from somebody. And over sort of a relatively recent history, I think there's only one player I can ever really remember that seemed to actually not affect when the captaincy got taken from them, and that was Big Amo. When Barry got the captaincy, you could probably even argue that Amo probably improved in some aspects, but his levels, I don't think he was still, when he was absolutely brilliant, he was world class, but when it wasn't, he was an absolute donkey, let's be honest. But I don't think Tav has got the mental capacity to be able to still stay at a club and not be captain. And as I said, if he's going to be the backup right back, how the modern right back plays, which Tav was, years ago, well into his 30s now, isn't he? So, definitely time for him to go, in my opinion.
Okay, so that takes us through our defence, and moving into the midfield. So we've got our sort of our centre mids here, the sort of maybe less attacking players going on. We're starting to see a bit better numbers as we move forward now, thankfully. The defence obviously had a pretty poor year. Someone pointed out in the comments, in particular, I think I should have saved the comment, but we lost something in the region of 40 odd goals this season, which is up on the 30 odd from last. So leaking more goals, which is obviously something we want to stop. In terms of the midfield, though, I do think there are much more success stories here. We've obviously got our player of the season, and Nicholas Raskin. Connor Barron had an excellent first half of the season. Fell out the team a little bit in the second half, but still came in, performed well, I think, the majority of the time. And then Diomande, who has been looked at, I think, as a bit of an enigma, kind of like Dessers. He's got people who are Raven fans, and he's got people who are dead against him, and that falls within Journal as well. We've got a few guys that don't rate him at all, but a few guys that are big fans. I do think he has shown a lot of promise this season, but he does still have development to make, particularly in domestic games. Come back to you then, Dave, on Diomande. Where do you sit on the sort of Diomande debate? Is he a player that you think is one to build on, or is he one that you think he just doesn't have enough?
So I think the problem with Diomande is very much we need to see who's the manager first and how they want to play. I do think there's a player in Dio. Seen some of his stuff from when he was before he came to us, and we're not playing him the same way that he was played there. So basically, we've seen this guy playing a certain way and thought, yeah, let's sign him. He'll be great for us. And then played him totally differently. And that, to be honest, is probably, it's more a stab at our transfer policy than anything, if I'm being totally truthful. I think there is a player in there. You can see at times his ability to keep the ball reminds me a bit of Joe Aribo times.
Mm-hmm.
He just seems to be able to dance around players and it's still stuck to his feet. I was quite critical and when he first came that he didn't really contribute enough. We had that 2 goals like one week after the other, and then it all kind of dried up. Obviously, he's got 6 for the season that's just finished. For me, I would be wanting kind of early double digits from at least a couple of my midfielders. Again, looking at this entire 4, and obviously we don't even play all 4 of them, but there's 17 goals there. I'd be looking for, you want at least 20, 25 goals coming from your midfield as a whole over the season, and we're well short of that. So I did notice quite an interesting comment about controlling the game. I do think that's fair, but again, I think that's sometimes symptomatic of the formation we set up with. We did notice when Ferguson went to flat 3 in the middle that actually, we did control games a bit more and it kind of seemed to work. And then we reverted back to the 4-2. 2 holders domestically, never a need for me. So I think Dio's shown enough to suggest he could be a valuable player in the team. But it's about how we maximize that, how we get the best out of him. And you know what? If we're going to play to his strengths, great, absolutely keep him. Let's see what he can do, because he did have a lot of promise before he came to us. If we're going to persist in playing, 2 anchors, then I would be for selling him, to be honest. I don't think he contributes that much in that kind of setup. Yep, that'll sort it.
That would sort a lot of problems, I think. Dino, if I can come to you on Connor Barron. Barron, good first half of the season, not so much in the team's second half. I think that's been reflected in his score there, a 5.1 kind of average score. But 93% of the guys have said they want to keep him. I think he's a good squad player. He's obviously Scottish, so he ticks that box for Europe. I do think we'll want to bring in some new midfielders who will challenge for places and maybe make it harder for Barron to get into the team. But I do think he is worth having as a squad player, and someone who can challenge, someone who is energetic, tough tackling, has kind of things that will be useful, particularly in European games. What's your thoughts on the season he's had for his first year with Rangers?
He was Rangers' best player. First few months of the season, which was a reflection, I guess, on how poor we actually were. No disrespect to Barron, but he is definitely. I would, by the way, I was thinking they're going to say exactly that, Curry, and I would have said at least a solid 7 for me over the course of the season. Didn't really do wrong, but he was just steady, wasn't he? And I guess obviously with the second half of the season with Raskan, it was difficult for him to get in the team. But that's what you want, to be fair. And yes, as he ticks a box for the homegrown quota, I don't envisage us selling him, but there will be reinforcements made. We could see Raskan and Dio both leaving this summer. So, and manager wanting to go with 3 central, 1-6-2-8s, 2-6-1-8, whatever, so you could see obviously the numbers in across the park obviously being a lot more, but one thing we do need for next season is physicality in the middle of that park. Now, Raska and Dio, they're quite small in height. They can handle themselves. Bryce is a young lad. Dio's built like the gable end of a pound note, so you've got to think, Barron is, good enough to be challenging for the position with the players that we have, is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay. And finally, I say finally, obviously there's Raskin there as well, and if you guys want to touch on him, then do during this next section. But I think we all kind of know, or at least I think majority of people sit in the same kind of space with Raskin. He was obviously very good this season. We could build a team around him, but it will potentially depend on what happens with his contract. He is coming to that 2-year point, so this could be the ideal time to sell him when we need to invest in other areas. He's obviously getting into the Belgian team and things like this, so his stock is high. And I think majority of folk would kind of sit there and say, happy if he stays, we can build around him, but if we can get a good offer, then do that. The more interesting question, though, I think, is around Bailey Rice, who started to get some inroads this year. 12 appearances, 3 starts. A lot of people are very excited by Bailey Rice. He's someone who, when he was coming up with Lennon Miller, was said to be of equal, if not better quality than Lennon Miller. Miller has obviously gone on. He gets regular first team football and has really set things alight with Motherwell. And there's rumours of £10 million bids from the likes of Man United doing the rounds. So lots of buzz around him. Bailey Rice has obviously come to Rangers, struggled to get first team appearances, as a lot of our young players do. But I think equipped himself relatively well in his in the appearances he made. He's got a fairly low score there, but I think that is more a reflection of just not having seen him an awful lot. I should point out the slight error here. It says he has 6 goals and 9 assists. That'll be a copy from when I copied the block of text from Diomande. I've obviously forgotten to change that. He has no goals, no assists, as far as I'm aware. But I'll come back to you. Dino, where do you sit on Rice? Do you think he's a player you want to see pushing more for first team appearances? Do you think he'll get the opportunity next season, or do you think it'll continue to be a struggle for him?
Nah, he's definitely got the attributes to play 20, 25 games next season. Maybe 15 starts, 10 sub appearances over the course of a season at least. And again, we should be looking to maximise his potential. As you just said, coming through, being touted as better as to Lennon Miller. And to me, Lennon Miller is a generational talent. So if, Bailey Rice was as good as that, or is as good as that, should I say, then we should be doing everything we can to get the best out of him. And there's no reason why I don't think that he can't come in and push the players in front of him and get a good amount of game time. What's he, 19? Is he 18, 19?
Bailey Rice is 18, yeah.
18, well, so 18 coming 19, 20, 25 games, first team appearances is going to do absolutely wonders for his progression. The flip side of that is, if he isn't going to be doing that, he unequivocally has to go out on loan. If he's not going to be getting that amount of first team exposure next season to help with his progression, he can't be another Leon King, or somebody that should be going out on loan that doesn't go out on loan, that's not getting first team experience. However, I'd love to see him heavily involved with the first team and not going out on loan, and we take the credit for progressing him.
Dave, if I come to you on Rice there, Dino's obviously touched on it. A couple of guys in the comments, Dado, RFC72, both touched on the idea of Bailey Rice going on loan. For me, I kind of feel like that could be a good option for him, given that we're obviously desperate to be pushing hard for the title, for winning things. We've got a couple of players that are already ahead of him. I think we'll be signing players that will probably come in ahead of him. And so I think that a loan could be the best option. Get him out to one of the better teams in the SPFL so that he can play regular football. We can see how he does against teams domestically, and then he could come back as almost a new signing in and of himself with a year of football behind him, and perhaps showing a bit more of the high praise that I've read about him.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an important point, Doug, is a lot of this praise is what we've read or what we've heard anecdotally. We haven't seen it yet in a Rangers jersey, and that's not to say that he isn't going to make it. I'm not saying that at all. But for me, I think it's actually vital for his development that he goes out, maybe initially for 6 months or a year, but with a recall option at 6 months. He gets regular game time, and we see how that improves him. Because someone did say in the comment, and I've said this on pods before, what's the difference between Bailey Rice and Lennon Miller? One got first team football, the other was stuck in the B team or dossing about at the side of the first team squad. So if we get him out somewhere, and it's got to be the right loan, I'm not saying just send him to St Johnstone and they can kill any hope of his career because they don't play anything like we would want him to. It needs to be the right club that play not the same football as us, but at least roughly similar, so that he gets used to that kind of setup, and then we see how he performs, because that's what he needs now. He needs to actually be playing week on week, not getting 5 minutes at the end of a game and then a start in the cup and then another 5 minutes when we're 5-0 up and game's already done. That's not going to help him develop at all. He just needs regular minutes now. So for me, get him out on loan, get him that game time, because he's not going to get it at Rangers. I see people saying that, just play him. I'm sorry, he couldn't get into the team with those three here. And as you said, we're more than likely going to be signing at least one midfielder, right? Is he actually going to get in the team before them, or does he need the minutes to put himself in a position where he can then get in the team in front of them?
Absolutely. I think I've got the perfect solution. We'll buy Lennon Miller from Motherwell and then loan Rice to Motherwell to replace Lennon Miller. There we go. Perfect solution. Okay, moving swiftly forward, our attacking mids, or our more attacking midfielder. So two of these players are already off the books in Lawrence and Hadji, so that kind of narrows things down a bit. I think we'll not spend too much time on these guys because I think they're fairly straightforward. Dowell, very low rating, didn't play very much before eventually going on loan. 100% of people want to sell him. I'm pretty confident that both of you will agree with that. He should be packaged with Davies and hopefully sold to Birmingham. I think that's the ideal solution all around there. Barami, he did have a good start, particularly in Europe. He had a couple of really good games there, but he's kind of struggled since then. 67% of the team want to sell him. There's apparently interest from a couple of places. Sassuolo have been mentioned in particular. I'm kind of either or myself with Brahmi. I could see him staying and being given another chance to improve. There is a player in there, so maybe another manager gets something out of him. But at the same time, if we can get a good couple million for him, which it seems like the offers are in the kind of 2 to 2.5 million range, which obviously is a little bit down on it's around about 3 million, 3.5 million, I think, that we paid for him. But I think I would probably accept that. Just sort of very quickly on Brahmi, if I start with you, Dave, keep him or sell him?
Yeah, I'd get rid. In fact, I would go as far as say every single person on there should be gone. Brahmi, a bit like when we talked about Proper, he done all right at the Euros. He did have a run of games, but he came to Scotland and it just hasn't worked for him. Again, probably no coincidence that the games where we have seen good performance have either been old firms or in Europe.
Yep. Dino, you agreed with that? You happy to see Brahmi go?
Aye. He's no a Rangers player, let's be honest. Another player that we're going to lose out on money on. Honestly. What did you say, Dave?
When Doug flashed Mitch's comment up, I said, "Aye, Mitch would."
We've just lost money on him. Like we've lost money on loads of players, so it's a tough pill to swallow. It really is, because it's consistently season after season that this is happening. Sorry to go on a wee bit of tangent there, but just grates on me. So get rid, and if we can get any money back from, then happy days.
Okay, look. We'll move swiftly on then to our forward players. So this is our sort of our wingers. Again, we've got a lot of low marks in this one, with the one exception, unfortunately, being the one that's left, in Vaclav Cherny. Don't spend too much time on him, given that he has left. I think it's very unlikely we're going to bring him back. There's rumours of Besiktas being interested. Figures of up to 9.5 million being mentioned as well, which I think does maybe push him out with. I would have paid up to the kind of 7.5 that was mentioned for the majority of the season, because I do think he is a Kent kind of player who does make the difference. Goals and assists there kind of speak for themselves. But I think he's gone, so we'll skip past him. There's really not much to make about most of these players, to be honest. Some of them are barely featured. In fact, all of them have barely featured for varying reasons. Curtis, obviously another young player coming through. I think, again, he's fairly straightforward. We'll keep him. He'll be there, keep developing. He did show some good signs of himself. Obviously got himself an assist in the Aberdeen game. So there's a player there, and I think he'll keep developing. If I come to you, Dave, though, on probably the big enigma here, which is Cortez. We're obviously locked in terms of we are buying Cortez for sort of 4.5 million. One of the most frustrating things for me this season was the last sort of 10 to 5 or 5 to 10 games where he was fit and able, but just didn't get picked because apparently he doesn't train well enough. But for a player who we are definitely keeping, I felt like we needed to see something of him to get an idea of what he was going to offer, if he's going to offer something. He got very few minutes, and they were kind of so-so. 53% of the team have said sell. So potentially, it's not impossible that we do sign him and immediately sell him. You'd think we'd make a decent loss if that's the case, though. Where are you sitting with Cortez?
So to be honest, I don't think there's a question there. As you say, we're locked in contractually to buy him. So that's happening, whether we like it or not. Realistically, try to sell him after a year and a half out, it's not going to happen, is it? So we're stuck with the guy. Now, there's kind of two schools of thought when it comes to this. I get what you're saying. I probably would have quite liked to see some minutes for him before the end of the season. But equally, there could be an argument that actually just let him fully recover from his injury. Don't expose him more than we have to Barry's kind of brand of football, and then next season is just a completely new start. But he has to kick on next season. I think Curry said in the comments, give him until Christmas. Realistically, again, we're not going to be selling him at Christmas time. Whether we want to or not is irrelevant. There's not going to be anyone pulling him about, especially if he's that bad. We do want to sell him at that point. Maybe come the following summer, though, that could be an option. As Dino's mentioned, this is going to be another player where, unless he does somehow come good, we are going to take a huge hit. And again, this comes back to what I was saying about our transfer policy. Madness. Why sign this guy? We signed him off about 4 games and he was injured the rest of the time. Do you know what? I heard a rumor that apparently we were told either, commit to buying him or we'll put him elsewhere. I'm sorry, at that point, I would have walked away and said, fine, put him elsewhere. It's a hell of a risk spending $4.5 million on a player who was injured most of the time. He had his loan spell here. And to be honest, I think the season that's just ended has just really proved what a ridiculous decision it was to sanction that permanent signing.
Yep, absolutely. I think a lot of people will probably agree with that. Do you know, if I come to you on the remaining 2, Matondo and McCausland, both 93% sales, so I think that means only 1 out of the 15 of the team want to keep them. I think the arguments for the 2, Matondo, okay, decent player, turn of pace, can score, but again, just is not available often enough. And then with McCausland, decent first appearance in the first half of the season. He's not really been able to get into the team this year behind Cherney, and he's not really performed to the same kind of level. So perhaps he's one, again, to look to sell or maybe loan, as he's just not good enough ultimately for Rangers. Do you agree with those 2 points of view, or do you think there's value in keeping either or?
Matondo, if somebody wants to take him for free, I think that's probably going to be the only viable option. I can't see any team wanting to pay money for him. To be quite honest with you, he has to go. He's injury prone and he has one good game out of every 10.
Entire time here.
Pardon?
His entire time here.
Aye. And McCausland, so my thinking on McCausland is that, like you'd said there, Doug, he couldn't break into the team with Cheney being in front of him. And the season he broke through, last season or season before last, whatever way you want to call it, he was getting a consecutive run of games. He was in the first team playing game after game after game after game. And he's not been able really to get that opportunity, I think, this season. I think he is a very good squad player. He ticks the homegrown box. He's also 22, so I think he's about 22, so I don't really think he should be going out on loan at that age. He should be considered a first-team squad member. There is definitely an SPL level player in there as far as I'm concerned, and it's definitely somebody I would be keeping as part of the squad. But in saying that, I'm just contradicting myself, because is he going to get a run of games? Well, no, because probably the right winger that we're going to be signing is going to be starting every week. However, we're not going to be able to sell all these players in the summer. So is McCausland somebody that we're maybe going to have to keep for another year and perhaps move on this time next year? Do you know, that's kind of where I'm at with things.
I think you make a good point there on the sort of the practical side, actually. He could be one that's there to fill out the squad. Maybe he doesn't play as often as he did this season. So we'll see what happens with that one. Pushing into the home straight then, we've got our strikers. 2 of our better scores here for our strikers. Some high percentage opinions on keeping or selling them. I'll save the big question, the ultimate question in football and life at this point, to the end, and start off with Danilo. In terms of Egerman, I think, again, Egerman, like Raskin, I think it's a fairly simple question. We've got 100% of the guys want to keep him. He's got a 7 there, 16 goals in his debut season. I think it's an excellent return. And I think everyone would be happy for him to still be here next year and indeed be our starting number 9. Again, if someone comes in with a great offer, then he'll go. But I think that's self-explanatory for Egerman. So if we focus on the other two, Dave, Danilo, he's again injury, a lot of injuries, but a lot of people have a bit more leeway with him because of the type of injuries. There have been on-field injuries that have been more sort of physical injuries rather than muscle injuries. Obviously, he had his face kind of smashed in at one point and things like that. He has shown when he's played he can be a decent player. He's got a good turn of pace. His movement is very good, which is things that some of our other strikers, don't have. Relatively decent return. I mean, we have obviously talked about the numbers overall are low, but he was still top 5 in for both goals and assists. So despite the numbers being low, he was still in there. 6 goals and 4 assists for the little amount that he played isn't too bad of a return. Do you think that suggests there's a player in there that if he's fit and firing and is played by whichever manager is in charge, that he could be, a success still? Or are the injuries too much for you? Do you think we need to be looking to offload?
Yeah, so firstly, I noticed you kept me away from Dessers to stop the pod going over 2 hours. But,
we'll get to him. We'll get to him.
Aye. Talking about Danilo, yeah, when you look, he's only started 9 games, right? He's half the appearances basically of the other 2. So 6 and 4 isn't a poor return, especially the limited minutes that he's had. However, there's definitely an argument about his physical ability to handle the league. Now, I think Danilo potentially is going to be quite lucky in the fact that he will be another one we'll struggle to sell with his recent injury history. So I think there's every chance that he is here. I don't know there'd be many folk wanting to take a punt on him. I think when he has played, he's shown enough flashes to suggest there is a player in there. I think potentially some of the best football Rangers played this season was when we had Egerman with Danilo just off him. So I think he could potentially fit into a role, but it's the fitness, it's the availability again. It's like Kamar Roof's back in the building, mate. We sit here and we're like, oh yeah, there's a player in there. If only he could stay fit, but he just hasn't stayed fit. And I'm not saying that's his fault, but ultimately it's the way it's worked out. I do think next season will be make or break for him. I think if he has another kind of injury-riddled season like he did this season, then potentially the board are just going to look to cut losses and kind of ship him out wherever they can for whatever money they can get. Yeah, he could come good, but I've got serious doubts about his physical fitness for the league.
Okay, so do you know what come to you? Obviously, I think one of the upsides with Danilo is he's still got a lot of time on his contract, so we do potentially have the scope to give him this extra year and kind of go, right, can you stay fit? Can you perform? And then if not, we cut our losses there. We've obviously spent a lot of money on him, so we maybe want to try and see if we can get something out of that, because we've obviously not gotten value out of that thus far. Are you, where would you sit? 80% of the team think we should just be selling them. Are you in agreement with that? In agreement with Dave?
Again, it's another one. Like, how many more players do we want to be losing money on, and how many more players do we want to be selling that we're not even selling for the amount that we signed them for? I mean, when's this going to end?
Yep.
As you just said, he has years left on his contract. Do it's got to be, I think there's got to be some extensive stuff done on him to make sure that he is fit enough in this pre-season, because we can't be having these passengers, these expensive passengers that we have all the time. We're just cluttered with them, and every sort of like defence midfield attack, it just seems to be a constant. We can never get rid of. We can never sign players that aren't robust. We can never get rid of players that are injured, which is obviously understandable. So he needs to step up next season. There's no disputing that he has got quality. But if he's going to be getting assessed in the summer, that's what I was looking for, by the sort of technology that we think that the 49ers group is going to be bringing to the club. And then I guess we just have to get rid of him. But I really hope that we can play him next season, and we can get back at least the $6 million that we paid for him this time next year.
Yeah, I think we'll maybe be wishful thinking to get 6, but I do think hopefully we can get something if he performs. I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I would potentially give him another year. Okay, so the big question, I will remind both of you, is how I know both of you are big Dessers fans. We are running over time, which I thought we would, given there's a lot to talk about. But so if I say briefly, Cyril Dessers, 29 goals across all competitions, which is obviously an excellent return. Some say he hasn't scored in enough of the big games, although he did do some. Betis, Man United, as examples. 7 assists, so he does chip in on that side as well. But his overall play as a single striker up front is not enough for what we need. I think that's a pretty universally held opinion for the most people. I do think we can get something out of it in a pair or in a different tactical setup where he has more support. But where are you guys sitting? 30 years old as well, which is another thing to take into consideration. He's scored tonight. He's playing for Nigeria, and he scored the opening goal in that game tonight, so that keeps his value up. So this might be the best time to sell him if we're looking to get value. So Dave, sell for max value, or are the goals worth more than that?
Well, as I've said in the group chat, mate, if he was a horse, you'd have taken him out back and shot him by now. Look, do you know what, right? I
think that's Mitch going to be upset with you now.
I think so. Like, the guy does guarantee you goals, right? Over the course of a season, he will get you goals. It's undisputable. My problem with Dessers is he can't be relied on. And that's not necessarily the big games, right? But he's really cyclic. And I think it was De Boer that said it before we even signed him, right? He's either a 9-10 or a 1-0, and there's pretty much no in between. Now, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a Rangers fan, even Mitch, that disagrees with that. When he's bad, he's really stinking because, as you said, the rest of his game doesn't make up for the lack of goals. But when he's on form, he is on form, and he does knock him in. If we were going into next season and we had a guaranteed number one striker that was not Dessers, I wouldn't be opposed to having him on the bench as a backup, someone to come in once we're a couple of goals up, get another couple, see the game out, pad the goal difference, right? I wouldn't be opposed to that. What can absolutely not happen is for us to go into next season with Dessers as our starting striker. If we do, we are conceding the league. It's as simple as that. Would I sell him now? Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even because he does my nutted. It's purely a case of right time, right place. His stock's high at the minute. He was top scorer. As you mentioned, he's just gone and scored for Nigeria in the international games. His stock's as high as it's going to get. We're not going to have a better time to sell him. And again, going back to the transfer policy, that is something that as a club we have been awful at for far too long. We don't sell players when the value's right. This should be the first time that we actually do.
Okay, and Dino, point made by Mitch there that I think also goes in Dessers' favour is that he's always fit, which is a big thing for a Rangers player. And that's one of the reasons that obviously we've had him as our main striker over the last 2 years. Do you agree with Dave? Would you keep him as a squad striker, given that he is always fit, and so he would likely always be able to come in and do a job if needed, as long as we had someone else, or are you just 100% out regardless?
Aye, 100% out. One of the things that about him is so infuriating is his inability to actually hold the ball up, take away all his goals and things like that, but his ability to hold the ball up, bring players into play, win fouls further up the park, things that. Now, I'm not saying he's like the Buff did. He's not got the physicality for it. He flaps his arms every time he goes down on the ground. He just greets like a wee bairn, and that just really infuriates me. And we need better than that now. Like people say, like, oh, good for a squad player. He's got, he's scored all these goals, but he's still it doesn't matter when he's still come on. He's still the same player. He's still got the potential to miss a sitter as to score a screamer. So that's never going to disappear because he's a squad player and only playing 30% of the games over the season. But his stock's never going to be any higher for ourselves. And I hope he scores a hat-trick for Nigeria tonight. And that helps somebody wanting to take him on. Now you could sell Dessers. Say you sell Dessers for 2-3 million, maybe that's pushing it, I don't know. And then we go and sign Shankland, who is free and probably a fraction of the wage that what Dessers is on. Maybe I could be wrong, but and somebody said that Dessers is better than Shankland. They're obviously on the wind up tonight. Yeah, that for me. Get rid. And again, thanks for your goals. But yeah, needs to go. We need better than that. And I think Igaman, Danilo, and Shankland at least next season is a pretty good strike force to challenge for the title.
Okay, look, so there we have the Dessers question answered there. Okay, so I wanted to just take this quick opportunity to say thank you to everyone who's still tuning in. Obviously, we're running a little later than usual. I did think we might, given everything we had to cover. So that's the very last thing then, as we finish off this evening. Given all of the percentages for keeping or selling that the guys put in, this would be our squad with who we've let go. So as my closing question to you, we're retaining 13, letting go 13. We've got 6 that have already left. So Dave, my closing question tonight then, looking at this, where do you think is the absolute key area that needs to be focused on in terms of new signings? And specifically, which position do you think is the absolute number one? That's where we need quality to make the difference next year.
So ultimately, looking at this sheet, you've got to say the defence. Centre backs, we're saying we'd keep Suter, who, I've no problems with keeping, but there's probably an argument you should have 2 better centre backs, and he's the backup. Again, looking at the fullbacks, Tavernier, I think, is 50-50. Sterling, aye, but is he ever fit? But for me, actually, this sheet doesn't tell the story fully, because for me, I think the key player is a number 6 that can actually dictate play, that can actually control the game, almost like a deep line playmaker. Now, I don't think any of the midfielders we have actually fit that role, but I think it's something we've been lacking ever since Stephen Davis went.
Absolutely. And thank you for coming on this evening, Dave. And for you, Dino, same final question to you. What do you think is the area that we need to focus on looking at
that? Areas for me: goal, centre half, left back, right wing, left wing.
So if I had to force you, I'm forcing you to pick one. Rangers have come to you and said, we will sign one player for you. Do you know which position are you making them sign?
Um, right winger.
Right wing. Okay, attacking player. Good choice. Thanks also to you for joining us this evening. For me, I think the defence is the main area that needs an injection of quality, as well as the wings. But if I was forced to pick, I would probably pick the wings, because for me, that's been our problem for the last few years. Not enough goals and assists coming from those attacking midfield areas. So, as I say, we've pushed the envelope this evening. Thank you everyone for tuning in and staying a little bit later with us. I did think we'd run over, as I say, given how much we had to talk about. It's not been a great season. We didn't have a lot of great ratings there, but hopefully we'll get some great news in the coming days that will start pushing forward this rebuild and sort of new life into this team. There are some assets there. There are some good players. We just need to add to that and hopefully build forward with whoever our new manager will be. I'll say thank you to the Match Our Go, our sponsor. You can go to their website, offtothematchourgo.co.uk, and get 10% off with the code Journal10. Thanks to Dave and Dino for joining me tonight and all their excellent points. Thank you to everyone in the comments. You've been commenting all through that with lots of great points yourself. So thank you for tuning in. And as always, every night is a Rangers Journal night. My name's Doug. Good night.